what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Jay DaCosta.
It is your girl, Katniss.
And together we are
The
Nitty Gritty. We are back. We are back from vacay. Those who follow us know we was out of town for a little while. Had a good little time. We're going to talk a little about travel. That's why I call it passport time. Because I think what happens is we get so caught up in what we see on social media. And then, what does that really matriculate to in real time? So we're going to talk a little bit about who's traveling, right? Because, we're always investing in our community. And how does that stack up against other communities, right? Because sometimes you look at travel, you just think, oh, everybody traveling. Well, is everybody really traveling? So we're going to break that down as far as like Americans and how does that affect African Americans, right? And then we're going to look at like what's the average cost of vacation. And then, we're going to share a little bit about, our experience out there in Greece. Had a cool little time. So, and of course I got my lovely lady next to me. So that's always nice. You know what I'm saying? Looking good, girl. I like that chocolate. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's chocolate.
He said like chocolate. Like,
it's chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Chocolate. Yeah.
chocolate.
Man, we got stories. We got some stories for y'all today. Mamie, I see you. Thank you. Good to be back in the soil. All right. So that's dope. So anyways, let's get ready to get to it. Before we get to really breaking down travel, just want to talk a little bit about what's going on current news. Only got two things. Number one, NBA news. Man, Lakers is down 3-0 to the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. So we'll see what happens. And then right now, I think Miami's up 2-0 against the Celtics. That game is about to come on here in a few. Yeah. If you've been keeping up with that. So, yeah, man, like, it's getting a little, it's looking like some sweeps out there for real, but we'll see what happens. I mean, it ain't over until it's over, but it's looking kind of over. But funny enough, these were the teams that were in the finals or the Western Conference, Eastern Conference Finals for the bubble. People like to try to say the bubble don't count. Well, if it don't count, how did these teams get back to the top spots again? So obviously the bubble meant something, right? And then also shout out to my man Armando Pantoa. Some of you guys on IG may know him as Tall Guy Tycoon. He is one of the great folks that came out of Austin Peay State University. Shout out to my homie. I got his book, The Strategic Millionaire. Haven't had a chance to get into it yet. It came while we were gone. But you best believe I will have this read before we have our next show for sure. But it's dope. I mean, it has a lot of good insight towards Bitcoin, just various investing, fiat dollar, you name it. And there's ways to really grow your money and everything. So some good information. Not a very expensive book to go buy. Go check it out. It is on Amazon. Gave that free press for the homie. Shout out to my people. Looking out for your brother. And I think he's having his strategy Sunday at 9, so you guys can tune into that on IG. But let's get down to why we're all really here. We may not be before you long. We might be here longer than we think. We'll see. But let's talk about it. It's that time of the year. People are getting their summer bodies together, right? Folks are pulling out the passports, getting ready to max out credit cards. I hope you're not maxing out credit cards to go travel, but we know some folks are doing it. So let's get into some travel. Before we get deep into the weeds, Katrina, general thoughts on Greece? Just from, because, obviously, I got messages while we were out and stuff like that. And, I appreciate all the love we received while we were out there. But just general consensus of Greece, what people should look for. Sometimes social media has a way of hyping things, right? So just, some general thoughts on Greece, things that people should be mindful of,
I'll take it from these two angles. If you're into history, cool place to go because you'll learn about different periods in which Greece was at the height of their empire and then times where they were conquered. And you'll be able to learn a lot and see a lot. Visually, definitely a different terrain than what we're used to here in the U.S. So it was good to see, a lot of the different scenic views. If you're into nature, you like, hiking, or you like being able to look at different mountains and peaks and valleys and understanding how produce grows and things of that nature. Greece is a great location. Santorini, beautiful. The white buildings, the blue domes. Mykonos, cute, stuff like that. But as far as like, if you're expecting the same vibes as going to the Caribbean, it's very different. That's how it's started.
Very rocky terrain.
Very rocky terrain.
And lots of hills too. So I would say, like, especially even in Mykonos and Santorini, it's a lot of walking. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I'm talking about the grade of the steepness of these hills. They're sharp. So it's not like an easy walk up. So if you're not in the gym, if you're not exercising, these are things that I think from a health perspective we don't talk about, because when we travel, we don't consider the fact that the infrastructure may not be the same as what you're used to here in America. So, and then you're building on different types of terrain. So you have to be willing to handle that grade of climb out there. So more reason to stay healthy. Also, people are generally smaller sometimes in these countries. So the showers, the bathrooms, the various accommodations, they're not as big and open like we used to here. Like something they're doing in the States, they have this thing where the curtain rods bulge out now, right? Because we have so many obese people. Just having a real conversation, folks. Try not to be offended. Well, over there, they don't have that spacing for the curtains. Like, so if you're a large person, a big person,
there's the shower period.
If you're not, I mean, like, you're not, how you fit in the shower, I don't know, let alone fit around the toilet. Because in some cases, it's like very compact, very cramped. They don't, in some of the hotels, what they call a 4-star may really only be about 2.5 here stateside.
Yeah.
Right? And then they don't necessarily have king size beds out there. They're like, we'll smash two twins together. But that's a different experience than being on a king size bed. So these are things to consider. And sometimes when we see these pictures of people traveling, we're not considering how much money was spent. We don't know what their financial situation is. And then a lot of times we're like to impose that of a celebrity. Here's the thing with these celebrities. One, they may have more money than you, right?
Not even may. If they're a celebrity, they should.
Well, they should, but we know that's not always true. But then, too, there's also the second currency of celebrity. So then people know, like, just from the sake of clout, chasing clout and all that. Like, oh, I have this rapper with me. I have this actor or actress over here. So then, you know, they have a team with them. They have people that's planning all this stuff for them. These folks are not carrying their own bags. They're not going through the same stuff we go through when it's time to hit back to U.S. Customs, or when you're trying to go to Blue Global to get some of your money back from any purchases you may have made, because that's a thing. And then in those other countries, they may not have the systematic directions you're used to. So we got turned around back and forth. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. I was like, all right, y'all about to make me lose my mind up in here. I'm about to be on some DMX stuff if y'all don't figure your stuff out. You get what I'm saying? Those are some of the things you come across when traveling. And, you know, obviously we don't put that on the highlight reel. It's all flowy dresses and, you know, landscapes and everything. And that's beautiful. And that's all a nice part. But it's the thing we don't think about. Also, I like something that you mentioned. Me and Katrina are nerds, so we want to see the history. So, like, we went to Greece. We wanted to see the Acropolis. We wanted to see the monastery and go to the temple at Delphi and all that stuff. Some people just want the luxury aspect of it. But that's a very different kind of trip. And honestly, I feel like sometimes, if I'm going to go to an historic place like Greece or Egypt or Rome, Italy, you want to see the Colosseum. You want to see the pyramids. You want to see all these different landmarks that make the place unique. If you're just looking to relax, me personally, I don't think I would go out to Europe. I think if the goal of vacation, because we have to consider why you go on vacation. As a matter of fact, since we're talking about that, I have a list.
I like
of
that.
Why
no, but I like the way you framed it. If you're looking to relax, I wouldn't go to Europe.
Yeah, because especially if you're trying to see different landmarks, because there was a lot. I was just talking to shout out to my man Focus on the game. I was just talking to him earlier, and I would say honestly, of the 11 days we were gone, we spent about 2.5 days traveling, whether
maybe
on a ferry,
even more.
Between plane rides, ferries, buses,
cars.
I mean, we spent about 2.5 days worth total there and back just traveling, because the ferries from Athens to Mykonos, that was 4 hours. Then Mykonos to Santorini, another 4 hours. Santorini back to Athens is
8 hours.
Driving up into the monastery and stuff like that, that's like 4 hours.
Yeah, like a day.
So you lose some time there, right? I mean, you're staying in different places along the way, and it's interesting. But these are things that people don't typically talk about. But once again, people travel for different reasons. So I have a list of some of the reasons why people travel or why we should travel. So learning about new cultures and ways of life, right? Travel is a great way to learn about different cultures and ways of life. You can experience new customs, traditions, and foods. You can also learn about history and geography from different places. And it's dope because like when you look at the moon, when you consider like even like the weather, the whole time we were there, keep in mind when you're in Europe, they normally go by Celsius, but even in Fahrenheit, they were saying it was only like 67, 70 degrees. But in the sun, it got pretty warm in Athens, Mykonos, and Santorini.
In the sun, but I still feel like it wasn't, in my opinion, warm enough to like be
not
out
really
and about
in the water
with a bathing suit like you would in the
Caribbean. Because like you definitely need like a jacket the second the sun drops.
Yeah, like in the Caribbean, you can wear a bathing suit with a little cover up and you good for the day.
And then the humidity, there was like no humidity out there, like no humidity. So that's one thing. And then the food, they hyped the food to me out there. The food was mid, but once again, depending on where you've eaten, what your experiences are, you may have a varied response to. But to me, the food was like, even when we had great food, it was like, I don't know if it was anything I would write home about, but it was cool, right? It was cool, but you get to try new things and see things. That's important. Also, you get to experience new things, try new foods, new sights, meet new people. One thing that was cool, we went with Exotica, and so part of our overall travel group, it was about 40 people, roughly.
Yeah, that's about 40, accurate.
About 40 people, a bus full worth of people. So we got to meet some folks that were from Cali, New York, folks from Puerto Rico, people,
Canada.
Jersey. There was a young couple that got engaged out there. Mm-hmm. That was part of our travel group. So that's always nice. Really cool. We got to meet them. I won't say of where, but we got to meet a past CEO of a very well-known pharmaceutical company, right? And that wasn't part of our travel group. It just happened to be staying at one of the places we were at. So you do get to meet some cool people. But then, like I led to earlier...
But that goes to show you, though, if that person's stature was staying where we were staying, and that's considered a four-star hotel, that just goes to show you back to your original point that, like, we were saying it was cool. It wasn't bad. It was cool, but it wasn't
Santorini.
To your point, it wasn't like a 4-star boutique here in DC or New York where we're like,
it's not like the Waldorf Astoria or the Four
But if
Seasons.
he's staying there, that means we must be doing all right.
Yeah, so everybody relative to what they can put together. And like I like to share with people too, me and Katrina, we don't drive luxury cars. We share a car that's paid off, right? We own a modest home. You get what I'm saying? So everything relative to what works within your region. And some people, for us, we love history. We're nerds. You put a few coins together and then you're able to take, a little trip and have a little fun while you're there, right? But another reason for travel, relax and distress. Personally, if you're looking to relax, I don't know if the kind of trip that we took would be it. I don't see to your first comment, I don't see your being a relaxing. Especially if you're trying to like see the whole gamut of a country, because the way you have to travel so varied along the way, that's not a very relaxing thing. To me, a very relaxing trip was probably like going to Jamaica. You're staying at one resort and you're kind of chilling. You do a couple excursions, but the idea of sleeping in, staying up late. Shout out to my parents. I know they're watching. One of their favorite places to go to is Destin, Florida. They don't even have to leave the country. And that's like a great place for them to relax. I know some people that love like Hilton Head in the Carolinas. Shout out to my pastor. They go out to Martha's Vineyard every August. Actually, we had a few people in this area. A lot of them like to go to Martha's Vineyard for the whole month of August. August is like a really popular month. They go to Martha's Vineyard. So there's different ways as to how people travel. And if you're looking to the relax and distress, sometimes you don't have to be so itinerary driven. It's just, hey, we just like the idea of we're just going here. We're going to sleep late. We're going to eat some food. If you're there with your husband or your wife, you might say, hey, we're just going to take some time to love on each other because our schedule is so complicated. We don't typically, get a chance to do that like we want to. So it might be relaxed.
But I think what I'm learning from traveling is that if your intention is to relax, then to Juwan's point, I think, this is me personally, I think I probably would just stay in the Caribbean or even do a staycation or something domestic if I'm going to relax. I think now that I've traveled a little bit more, if I'm going to a different country, I have the mindset already that it's probably going to be less relaxation because you're going there to experience different cultures, customs, traditions, see historical sites. If you're going to a different country to relax, it's kind of like you might as well save your money and just do it stateside. Or, if you want to relax, go to LA for a few days. Or like you said, Florida. Or go to Puerto Rico. But I'm learning that, at least for me. I feel like when I think about what I want to experience in different countries, it's hard to just sit there and relax because the part of it means you have to get out and really get in there. It's kind of like if you go to Jamaica, you could go there to just relax, but if you want to see more of Jamaica outside of tourism, you're going to have to travel. And it's not going to be like a highway, byway type of situation.
Yeah, and then, some other points they bring up is, one, broadening your horizons, gaining a new perspective on life, right? When I broaden your horizons, sometimes when you get a chance to learn firsthand about different cultures, because it's one thing to read something in the history book that they wrote to you or said to you, but then when you see it for yourself, like one thing we saw for ourselves is when you go to Greece, and then we used to consider how many people conquered that land, right? And then even how they depict themselves changes based off the times. Their earlier depictions of themselves looked almost Egyptian adjacent, but then after you start looking at the conquering of Rome and all of that, then the newer sculptures and all of that look more European in faces and stuff like that. So it's interesting to see how their depiction of themselves change depending on what period you're pulling that information from. And then also, sometimes it just helps you be a little bit more appreciative of what you got. You go to another country, I think we glamorize, and this happens a lot just as Americans, but then especially as African Americans, we don't like the way we're treated here or the things we go through. And then you go to another country, you realize, well, this ain't it, my boy. If I had to travel somewhere,
listen.
I'm telling you right now, if I ever got to leave America, Greece is not going to be my first place that I think to go to.
I'm with you.
Because Athens was low-key hood.
Low-key? It's high-key. What you mean? There's no low-key about it. Athens is...
It was literally...
Think of the worst part of the Bronx, New York. It's all over the city.
We asked somebody, because we were trying to find... Here's the funny... this is a whole story in itself. So, they don't give you washcloths out there in Greece.
Though people
actually, most of Europe... They don't give you, most people I know that have gone to different places in Europe, they typically don't give you washcloths, right?
I want to just say this. There's been so many arguments on the internet about, washcloths is nasty. I want to make a caveat. You use the washcloth one time and then you dispose of it.
Or you put it in, or you put it in the wash bin to wash it again, right?
Okay.
You're not using the same washcloths for a whole darn week.
But the purpose is you got to get into the crevices of the areas that don't see the sunshine.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta wash that thing, right? So they didn't give us washcloths. So our first thought was, let's go ahead and buy some for the trip. We just buy a whole
go to the
little
store
pack. So we go to the store. They don't even have any washcloths available. At the nice department store, the little regular joint. And mind you, these places are like food deserts. According to what the food desert standard is, there were places like in Lidl. If you ever heard of Lidl or Aldi's, those kind of grocery stores or department store places are really big out there in Europe. We seen a couple of Lidls while we were there, but they're not in abundance, right? So a lot of it is just basically bodega type style places. But there wasn't washcloths available, so I ain't gonna lie. We had to take a towel, cut it up into different pieces, and we made enough washcloths for the whole time we was there. Because one thing we gonna do, we gonna wash our body, okay? So we was good to go. We wasn't out here doing the hand thing. If you do the hand thing, that's on you. But I'm black, all the way black. I need that washcloth.
We do the hand and the washcloth and the exfoliate and soap
all
and
of that,
water.
you know what I'm saying?
And body wash.
One thing I'm gonna do is smell luxurious.
You need to be in the shower for a bare minimum of 10 minutes.
Yeah, but you need to wash that behind, okay? So yeah,
and we got wipes.
Yep, wipes, all of that, right? So. But yeah, they didn't have that available. And then even when we were out and about, so we go to the store, it's what, 8 o'clock we leave out? We're asking the guy how do we get to the little market because we're hoping to find some washcloths. And he's running. And we see people on the streets,
Like
they're running. And we're like, why are people running? Because they're like, all the stores are closing at 9. And then we find out where our hotel was from. Mind you, this is supposed to be a nice part of Athens. The square where our hotel is from is like one of the roughest parts of Athens at the same time. So people are running because they don't want to be out after 9 o'clock. Because I guess it gets wild in Athens. They start throwing up Greek gang signs, and we ain't talking about fraternities and sororities, okay? Like it gets real out there in Athens. So people was running to get to like, yeah, you don't want to be out here past a certain time, you know? And like, we didn't mess around, you know? So we was like, yeah, we cool going back to the room. That's all right. You know, we'll just relax. But yeah, so when you do travel, it does make you a little bit appreciative of what you have. When you think about infrastructure, when you think about some of the things that are common to you, whatever that may be, you may go without that in another country. So the nice thing about travel is it does, you know, give you a different perspective on life. Like, people live differently, and sometimes we get a little spoiled and we don't know what to be grateful for. There's a song by William Devon, really Be Grateful for What You Got.
We are, you know, and you hear so many people in different countries say, man, I wish I could go move out west. Mm-hmm. And I used to be thinking to myself, why does everybody want to move to the U.S.? And like Juan said, like when you're black in the U.S., you always think like, oh, maybe we need to go someplace else. No. Malcolm X had it right when he said Plymouth Rock we didn't land on Plymouth Rock landed on us. Am I saying it right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Shout out to Malcolm X's birthday was May 19th.
You basically, what I gathered from him was Black American culture was birthed here. This is our country, and we should be appreciative and grateful to live here, like you said, because living in other countries is a very different experience. They don't have as much. They don't make as much. Infrastructure isn't as advanced. I can only think of maybe like a few, not even a few, maybe like 3 countries off top that might be more advanced than the U.S. One being probably what? Japan? Is it Japan?
Yeah, there's some cities out there, like, believe it or not, there's a lot of, we want to see them for ourselves. But, you know, I've always heard that a lot of the African cities, like from Accra to Cape Town, some of them are actually more advanced than ours. If you look at a lot of various Asian cities like Tokyo and stuff like that, they have cities way more advanced. Wuhan, China, way more advanced than what we've seen in the U.S. You can talk about Dubai. When you look at the infrastructure in Europe and places like Berlin, or if you look at like London or Paris, and how efficient those trains run to get you from one country to the next, you know, there's things that sometimes may be superior. And when you get to travel, you get to see that for yourself. And then last but not least, just keep in mind when you're traveling, you're looking to create memories that are going to last a lifetime. I think one thing we have to keep into perspective is, like, you know, if you want to go see the Eiffel Tower, or you're going to go see Big Ben, or you want to go see the pyramids down in Egypt or even South America, right? You're creating memories. You're going with people, hopefully, that you love or enjoy to be with. And you're creating memories that no one can take away from you. When it's all said and done, this is part of living life. And we got to remember, like, you know, we're here, we're trying to live some life. So keep that in mind. Now, I wanted to pull some stats, too, on who is traveling. Because I think sometimes everyone sees folks traveling and everybody wants to do it. But then we got to consider, well, how does demographics in America play a part into that? Because it's interesting, like, some of the stares you get or some of the questions you get when you travel. Because people are kind of like, okay, y'all young and black, so why are you traveling here? And you wonder, like, well, why are people treating me like this? Like, they act like they ain't used to Americans traveling. But when you start pulling the stats based off the U.S. Travel Association, and you see how that breaks down racial demographics, you're like, oh, this is why people act like this when we travel to different places. So check this out. Looking at this last report from 2019 with the U.S. Travel Association, Asian Americans, 57% of Asian Americans have traveled internationally in the past year.
I believe
it. Compared to 40% of the general population.
I definitely believe it.
Hispanic Americans, 42% of Hispanic Americans have traveled internationally in the past year. Then next to them is white Americans at 38%, and then black Americans at 28%.
And I see MENA is missing from the list completely.
Who?
MENA.
What's MENA?
Middle Eastern, North America.
Oh yeah, they didn't know. I think they include them in Asian Americans. On this particular one, when I had looked into it, they're included.
Like Middle Easterns to me is not.
They're part of Asia in general, so they that's how they do it. They wrote them into that. But we're not traveling as much. And when some key notes they put out, one, when you look at Asian Americans, they're adding Middle Eastern into that demographic. But then also what they find is actually more than anyone else, Asian Americans and Hispanic Americans are more likely to have friends living in other countries that can make it more affordable for them to travel internationally. Also, they talk about how there also tends to be closer proximity. Those who tend to travel normally live in closer proximity to international airports and have more access to travel information and resources. So where you live, so what happens, and that makes sense, because when we were traveling with our group, those who were American, most of them live on the East Coast or the West Coast. Mm-hmm. There was not one family or one group I can remember that was Midwest at all.
That's true.
Everyone was either from Canada, New Jersey, New York, DC, the DMV area, or Florida. And then we got folks that were, we ran into some people from Atlanta, but once again, that's a metropolitan hub in its own right. And then California.
That's it, yeah.
Even when we met other Americans out there, they tend to be from those areas. So that all makes sense according to what the U.S. Travel Association was saying. And then when we look at where we typically travel to, right? So one aspect is which Americans travel where, and they show also, they were saying that a number of factors that may contribute to these various differences include income, education, and access to travel resources. Keep in mind, we talked about finances the last episode we had before we was gone. And one of the things we saw that educationally and financially, Asian Americans tend to do better. Then you have typically white, then Hispanic, and then black. But once again, keep in mind when it comes to travel, they said having family abroad is a big contributor as to how you may travel.
I was going to say, I feel like a lot of Asian Americans have a stronger connection to their lineage, meaning you could be maybe 3 generations of Asian American born here in the U.S., but if you're, let's say you're Chinese, you're Chinese, you probably know your I don't know,
have your heritage, your family, your extended family.
You probably know like your history. Yep. You probably have people like back home. Whereas for Black Americans, we have to be mindful of the fact that many of us were brought here, obviously from in captivity through slavery, that we've lost some of that lineage. So we don't know what tribe we're from. We don't know if we have family in Sierra Leone or Ghana or Nigeria. So therefore, the desire to go back to Africa to meet family is going to be different than if I'm here and I know my great-great-grandmother has, let's say, I was part of a dynasty and I have cousins and they own land and property, in, Japan or whatever. That's a different mindset or desire. Also, the birthright. We met a girl who was Jewish and she was like, oh yeah, my friend just went to Israel for free because of the birthright.
Yeah, so dual citizenship like and all that plays a role. Now, when they look at where are the top 10 destinations for Black Americans that travel, keep in mind when they say Black Americans, according to the U.S. Travel Association, they're not looking at just African American, meaning people who are descendants of slaves. They're looking at Nigerian Americans. They're looking at Jamaican Americans. Looking at Haitian Americans and everything else in between, right? So what we found is 40% of Black Americans who travel abroad, they go to the Caribbean.
Makes sense to me.
And then and think about the family ties. So think about your family. Growing up, you guys went to Jamaica and stuff like that.
Every year.
But then you have family there. Y'all stayed at that, you said that Holiday Inn out there in South Lamar?
No, that's not. The Holiday Inn is in Montego Bay. In South Lamar, we stay at the Camingo Hotel.
The Camingo Hotel, right? Now, I know sometimes you say it doesn't have the nicest digs per se, but
you know what? I'm not even gonna do that. The Camingo always do good to the family, but it is very country.
Far out country. It ain't secrets. Put it that way.
It's not. Don't go there thinking you about to get. You get a fresh home cooked meal though.
But you got that family. You get that family atmosphere. But some people don't want to travel for that. So those are things to consider, right? Then next in line is Africa at 20%. But once again, they're talking about Black Americans as a whole. Think about all of our Nigerian and Ghanaian friends that live here. They go back home all the time. They got family there. We got friends that we want to travel with to Africa because they have connections there. And once again, because we live in a large metropolitan area, we have access to people who live there. So if we get a chance to go, we're leaning on the fact that we have some connections that can kind of help guide us along that path. Then the next 15% is Europe, just Europe in general. So that's everything, you know, from Switzerland all the way down to Greece and all that stuff where we were at. Then next is 10% is Asia. At 5% South America, so we're talking about Colombia, Venezuela, all of that. Then Mexico, then Canada at 3%, and then the Middle East at 2%, 1% of Australia. So obviously, black folks ain't really looking to go to Australia.
I don't think many Americans are. It's far.
Funny thing about it, shout out to my barber, Mike. His wife just went to Australia to travel out there. I think it was like part of work, somewhat associated. But I thought that was dope because I'm like, that's not a place that we normally hear about black folks wanting to go. That's not even on my list. Like, there's really no.
I don't think it's just black. I think it's Americans. It's far.
I mean, there's no.
I don't hear a lot of Americans saying I'm going to Australia. I don't.
I have no desire to go there. There's like nothing. There's nothing for me there personally. Like, I mean, I'm not a diver, so there's no need for me to want to see the coral reef. I think I'm good on Australia. Yeah, I'm good on that. If I don't get to do that whenever in life, I think I'm fine.
I think with European countries. One thing Juan and I experienced, you have to be mindful of, well, no matter whether it's European or Asian, you know, America is a melting pot. So we have a lot of different ethnicities, races here. So it's not uncommon to be like, oh, I've seen pretty much everybody from around the world. But when you go to different parts of the world, their demographic might all look the same. So when they finally see you in person, they're like, whoa.
There was so many people tripping over your hair.
They was like, oh, you a black guy. Somebody said he like LeBron James.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, so we're at the Temple of Delphi.
What?
Right? Let's tell this story. So we're at the Temple of Delphi. Delphi is deeper into Greece, right? Deeper into the mainland. There was like some kids there. They look like they might have been high school age. Mm-hmm. And we're at the temple. And mind you, that's like a nice steep walk up to get up there to see everything. And the kids are like, every time I walk past, they're like whispering, like, and then one of them, I guess he thought he was being bold. He was like, LeBron James? And I was like, I just laughed, like, okay. But they thought, now.
Oh, I get it. Maybe he wasn't saying you look like LeBron. Maybe he was more trying to reference, like, because you're black, you should know who LeBron James is.
I don't know. But every time the kids saw me, they were always going like this. And they were like, LeBron James? So I'm like, I'm not that tall. I'm 5'11". All right, I don't even try to act like I'm 6 foot. I'm 5'11 and a half, y'all. I did not hit the 6 foot mark, and so I mean I'm taller than a lot of them, but I'm not like crazy tall. Like I've met Katie in person before. Like that's like that brother was tall, right? West Russell met him in person. He's tall. I'm not gargantuan like that. But they kept on saying LeBron James, or they kept on coming to you like, you're so pretty.
They did say that. Yeah, like this is weird.
Yeah, it was like weird. It was definitely
my hair.
Like,
they was like, I want to know how long it took. They were so interested in the braids.
Yeah, fascinated by the braids. Like just uniquely, like, oh my God. And like one guy was like, he didn't know how to say was that your hair, so he was like, original.
Is that original? I was like,
that was funny. So like, yeah, you get that when you go to these different countries because it's like sometimes they're not used to seeing certain things. So that was interesting. But then everybody's always wondering about the cost. So I broke down like what were the average costs for 2 people going on a 7-day vacation, right? So if you look at the Caribbean, that's about $3,000 to $4,000. And now mind you, this is just average accommodations. We're looking at the cost of, this includes the cost of flight, accommodations, food, and some activities, right? Keep in mind, some of these places are cheaper than America. So when they look at the Caribbean, you're looking at $3,000 to $4,000. This is based off 2 people. Africa, about $4,000 to $5,000. South America, we're talking like Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil. You're looking at $3,500 to $4,500. Europe is on the higher end, $4,500 to $5,500. And if you're looking at Asia, you're looking at $5,000 to $6,000. So you're talking about Dubai, Tokyo, China, Thailand. Even though Thailand is kind of cheap, you still got to fly out there, and sometimes the tickets ain't cheap, right? So, and then keep in mind, there's a lot of variation in this because, once again, if you want upgraded accommodations, you start like them flights. It ain't like traveling during COVID where you got all that empty space. You got to pay extra for them for that extended seat now. And you see people like traveling little pods. The what did they call it on American Airlines? I forget what their title was for it. It's there's business class, but then there was like this first class. It was like a heightened first class, but it's like a legit pod with a really comfortable chair. You can kick your feet up, stuff like that. Really nice accommodation, but those tickets were like $5,000 one way per person. So when you start talking about the upgraded accommodations, business class is still more expensive, and then you have, even if you go main cabin extra room, just so you like, for those guys who are like 6 foot tall or you want to be able to stretch your legs out, you're paying a little bit of extra for that. Not nowhere near $6,000, but it might be an extra $100 bump per person. That stuff starts to add up. Or if you start talking about, I want to eat at this nice restaurant when you're out there. If you want to start shopping, right, that's an added cost. So I think sometimes we can't get caught up into everybody's experience when they go abroad, because you got to consider, like, no one's doing this at the kindness of their heart. There's a cost for eating octopus and lamb and all this stuff out there, and drinking photo shoots, drinking, going shopping at the premium stores. You know, some people like to shop at the plaka. That's what they call it in Greece, the plaka. Get their little chotskis and all that stuff. Some people want to shop because, you know, it might be a couple $100 cheaper to buy the Gucci bag out there in another country. So we even had people hitting us up like, yo, y'all going to Greece? Do you mind taking my card? Hook me up, buy a little something for me? Because people know that sometimes the prices are a little cheaper, but it's still a Louis bag, so it ain't cheap. You get what I'm saying? But different ways of living for everybody. The main thing is, only thing we can give you as far as advice towards it, there's 5 things to consider. 1, book your flights and accommodations in advance. The earlier you book, the more likely you are to get a good deal. I think we booked 6 months in advance, just about. Next thing is, consider traveling during the off season. The off season is typically the time when the year prices are lowest. So for example, the Caribbean is kind of really cheap after October, but that's also hurricane season. So it gets a little rainy and all that kind of stuff. That's something to think about. Because then now the Caribbean also tries to charge more for just any holiday. Like, they're trying to charge more for President's Day. We don't even travel during President's Day. That's not even the thing for us. Most of us don't even get that darn day off. But the Caribbean now try to use this as a way. They put premium blocks on rooms, right? So sometimes that's not the best time to go down to the Caribbean. The other thing is, if you're cool with that, stay in hostels or guest houses. Some of those are free throughout Europe. It's a great accommodation, right? Cook your own meals. So if you do like the Airbnb thing, you can go to the market, buy some food, but keep in mind the market might not be available to you like we're used here. Like, you may not have a Giant and a Safeway and a Whole Foods and a Trader Joe's and all that stuff to go to. It might be like, oh, okay, the market is kind of limited. So, but if you can cook your own meals, that might be a great way to save money. And then also take advantage of free activities. There are many free activities available in most destinations. Do some research and find out what's available where you're going. I can tell you most of the stuff in Greece you had to pay for. The monastery had a cost.
All of them.
Everything. Delphi, because what they do is you can see stuff from a distance, but if you want to get up in there where you can actually take a reasonable picture or really see something, you're going to have to pay to get in. Now, if you're outside the U.S. and traveling here, shoot, D.C. a good look because the Smithsonian is free. But to see the monuments up close, you don't have to pay for that.
I would say, I think it's important to consider going through a travel agency, and the reason why I say that is because, like in our case for Greece, a lot of things weren't close, so it required, ferry, bus, whatever. Mm-hmm. When you're in a different country, it don't matter if it's the Caribbean or Europe, and they know you're American, they're gonna charge you whatever.
Oh yeah, because
so if it's already built into your package, they can't charge you whatever because your travel agency has already pay whomever to take you to and from. But if not, even if you were to go to, let's say, when we went to Egypt, if you don't remember, our travel agent paid for our ticket to get to pyramids because she was saying that without her doing it, they might charge us whatever.
Yep.
So those are things to consider. Like, people want to do this luxury, I'm staying in a 5-star resort, and that's all your budget is going towards. But you got to figure, if you want to do anything outside of the resort, mm-hmm. if you don't have it already built in, you're going to get whatever price the locals tell you, and it might be more than really what it's worth.
And when you're with a travel group, you get treated different ways. Like, for instance, we had decent accommodations every step of the way. Athens was the only thing that was kind of hood, but when we stayed at Maturia, that was dope. Mykonos is definitely really nice.
Matura
and Mykonos are probably the nicer hotels. Santorini wasn't bad. It was just I didn't like the ventilation
the cave situation.
It was like a cave room. It was really cute and unique, but I didn't like the way the ventilation was set up. But outside of that, it was a really dope hotel.
I was gonna say Matura. For most people, I can see them saying it being boring, but for some reason, this may be like deep, the Christian in me, but I honestly felt like almost like closer to God in that environment.
Yeah, I mean, it was up in the mountains.
It was like crisp
super
air.
Serene. Oh, the air was crisp up there.
The air was crisp. Man, I felt like with the fog and like when we went out that early morning, it was just like, man, God, like I felt like literally at peace. Oh, like I felt more peaceful there than any part of the trip. Like this is just like I feel like I'm at peace, and we saw like a whole bike group there.
Yeah, there was like international biking group that was out there. They just to bike out into the mountains.
I was trying to figure out where were they biking because the mountains look rough.
Man,
you gonna fall
they're
over?
International bikers. They about that life, I guess. Like they like these are folks that like probably watch the Tour de France.
And again,
like mad hills for that.
And again, for Matura, I would not recommend like if you're looking for luxury, ambiance, sexy. No, but if you're a celebrity and you can't go many places without people recognizing you, and you usually want rest and relaxation and seclusion, I can see people going there because it's like off the grid.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we got to see the best of both worlds. The first half of the trip was more so like getting to see those different parts of Greece that no one's really posting pictures about.
Right.
Seeing the monastery. I mean, obviously, who wouldn't want to see the Parthenon or see the Temple of Delphi?
There are people even on our little group that were complaining like, oh, I could have done without
that. Yeah, because there were some folks that was like, I could have dealt with this. But I'm like, how? For me, this is just us personally. It's like I can't go to Greece and not see the Parthenon and not see the statue of Leonidas or something like that. Like those are the things. It's like I'm in this historical area. I want to see these historical sites. Like I couldn't have been in Egypt and been like, "Did you see the pyramids?" No, I didn't see the pyramids.
Right?
What?
It's like, why did you go there?
You went to Egypt. You didn't see the pyramids? Nah, man. I was just partying in Luxor because Luxor is kind of like the happening spot of Egypt. And that's kind of like what happens in Greece. A lot of people go to Mykonos and Santorini. I think they said Mykonos and Santorini both are going to see over 2.5 million visitors this year, which is a crazy amount. They said the number is expanding and expanding every year because, honestly, I didn't even know about no Santorini, Greece. I'm going to be honest with y'all.
Social media.
I didn't know about Santorini, Greece until Rick Ross rapped about it. When he rapped about it, and I'm trying to remember what album that was. I was like from 2014. He rapped about Santorini, Greece, and I remember looking it up. I'm like, oh, this sounds sexy because you have these cascading mountains, you have these beautiful white buildings looking down, and it's nice until you get there, and when you realize how much walking is involved, it's still very beautiful when you go.
Even driving from the port up take time.
Oh yeah, because it's like Mykonos is a little bit closer to the water elevation, but Santorini elevation is high.
You're literally like this. Here's the port, and to even get to your hotel, you're like
literally
this.
Zigzagging up the mountain.
And it's like traffic. It's only one lane down and one lane going up. But maybe you want to give the people the reason why Santorini, the buildings are white and blue.
Oh yeah, so that was dope. So one thing we learned about why the buildings are white and blue. One, they put the blue on the churches. That's symbolic of the churches. So you see the blue top. But the reason why most of the buildings are white is what at first they used to be brown and they more so like blended camouflage because there was a lot of pirates in that region. So to hide themselves and be safe from pirates, they would paint the buildings brown and they would fit into that rocky brown terrain of what the area looks like. It's a very rocky area. It's not a lot of vegetation out there. It's a very rocky area. But then they started painting stuff white, not because they wanted to paint it white. The asbestos paint they used to use for sanitation, they cleaned it like to sanitize it. The asbestos, it was like a white looking paint that was left. So then what they noticed also as a result of using that is, it's like, oh wow, when we use the white, it makes it cooler. Mm-hmm. So then they started, obviously asbestos is a problem. So then what they started doing is they started painting the buildings white because they realized it helped reflect the light and it made it cooler in the summertime. So that's how everything became white out there in Santorini. Kind of like when you go to Caribbean, they use a lot of pastels and white on the buildings. But that's how they discovered it because of the asbestos initially.
What is asbestos?
Made it white.
I don't get it.
Asbestos is what they used to even use in our buildings here in America, but it can cause mold. Not mold, but it can cause health problems. That's why
is it like a concrete?
No, it's like the best way to use it is kind of like a paint. It's like whitewashing something. Like you're cleaning something, but it leaves like a white residue. But that stuff is unhealthy. You breathe it in, it could kill you. Like that's a whole other conversation. Let's not.
Like
I
a
don't
bleach
wanna,
almost.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I won't go into the weeds of asbestos, but it's not healthy. That's why if people find out now if you have asbestos, they'll tear the whole building down and rebuild another one. It's a serious health problem.
And then we
for
learned that
cause.
a cruise ship in Santorini had.
There was one that had wrecked.
Yeah.
The driver had ate something bad or something like that.
Odd.
Or more likely drunk. And ran into the side of the mountain there. And to this day, there's like a shipwreck. A current shipwreck within like in the last 5 years or something like that. So that's interesting. But yeah, like it was a cool trip. But once again, you just got to know what you're traveling for. Kind of like what you're getting into. And enjoy it to the best of your ability. But overall, it was a cool trip. It was a great experience. I think some experiences are like, once you do it once, that's good enough.
What was your 2 questions? Okay, I'll start this first question. If you have to choose between being an Athenian or a Spartan, which one and why?
Oh, I mean, well, one, Spartan.
I would be a Spartan too.
I mean, just like, I think their history and everything. But it's funny because when you look at the 100-year war between Athens and Sparta, the Spartans won, but the Athenians kind of won at the same time because when you think about what is Greek culture and the things we celebrate, it's more so what the Athenians brought to the culture, right? True. When you look at boats, art, lavish living, stuff like that, the Spartans were a warring city-state. When you think about like what they brought in the field of army and stuff like that and discipline, the Spartans didn't believe in living in luxury or in access, if you will. It was just enough plot of land for each family to survive off. And then the Spartans, I mean, they had one skill set. It was fighting. They didn't do other things. It was like you fought and then you knew how to farm your land to take care of your family. But that's it. Like, this is what we do. This is Sparta.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Out of everything we saw, 6 different locations, what was your favorite location and why?
So I guess the highlight, well, I mean, obviously I kind of knew what to expect from the Parthenon. That was dope, right? It was cool. But I think the 2 main highlights for me was the monastery, right? I really enjoyed that. And then the views, the monastery, and then I would say Mykonos. Because Mykonos was like, from like vacation, like a true like vacation, just like kicking it, chilling. Mykonos would be, if I ever went back to Greece, it would be maybe to stay like longer in Mykonos. Yeah. Mykonos was dope. Santorini was cool too. And there's a lot of people, and it's funny, there's no wrong or right answer there, right? Yeah. There's some folks that when they left, they was like, oh man, Santorini, loved it. It was amazing. There were some people that were like, oh no, Mykonos. To me, Mykonos is like my vibe, what I like. I would say Mykonos. And it's funny because I'm not like a party, hangout kind of person. And I think more of those type of people would like Mykonos because there's more to do there nightlife. But I just think in general, like the way the elevation, the way the city is set up, I feel like Mykonos is easier to get around in.
Yeah, it's just more convenient.
To me, so like Santorini is a little inconvenient the way you have to get around the island. It's a little bit bigger. So, but yeah, I would say Mykonos. I lean towards Mykonos.
I can see why people hyped it up on social media as far as like, if you spending your honeymoon and you got like a really nice hotel with a nice view, you have a jacuzzi overlooking the cliff with the water in the background. I get it. But my thing is, now that I've gone, I wouldn't travel that far for that experience, but you can get that in the Caribbean somewhere.
Yeah. I think if that's all I want, is just to chill, I can just go down to Jamaica any day.
Really?
Or Cozumel or Calica or, Puerto Rico, whatever, Costa Rica. There's a number of places I could go to. Just a 2-hour flight versus a 9-hour or 10-hour flight. I could do that instead. That's just me personally. But everybody travels for their own reason. And who am I to take that away from you, So, do what works for you. But yeah, that's it for me. Any final thoughts on traveling?
The only last thing I would say is I appreciate the diversity of the U.S. being, like the only black Austin was different. It was different. They definitely were curious, about us, and it's just different. It feels weird.
Yeah. So you learn to appreciate to be around some culture and some diversity for sure. But overall it was a cool time. Some of you guys got to see our travels. If you're close friends of ours, you got to see our personal IGs and stuff, and We posted some pictures and stuff like that. I think it was a cool time. And, you get to see where we go next. Because there's always something next on the horizon. So, that's just a little bit of that. But it was fun. And traveling in a group could be cool. But then just keep in mind, if you're going to travel with a group, meaning like a group of your actual friends, you got to consider what kind of trip you're taking. If you want to go with the group of friends that like to turn up and have a good time, know that going to a bunch of historical places might not be the move for them. And if you do want to hit up a bunch of historical places, I mean, you got to find the right folks for the right thing. Keep that in mind. And then also finances too, right? You got to make sure that the people you're asking to come are down to spend that money, meaning do they see the value in said spending?
Turn up party, do it in the Caribbean. If you going overseas, don't invite no turn up party folks because Europe is very, very different. Yeah,
and it depends on where you're traveling to Europe because you can party, but I don't know if you would do that in Greece. I still think
it's going to be still going to be the vibes that people are used to.
Yeah, exactly. So just know who you're traveling with. You're going to do a group trip. Keep in mind the group that's traveling with you, and
And in Greece, they love
everything is for everybody.
They love their red wine. They love their olives, man. They was oliving us
and there's coffee everywhere. This guy.
Oh, I forgot about that part.
Man, you got 5 coffee shops next to each other.
And bread. Bread, pita, croissants. The butter croissants was going though.
Man, them butter croissants
was
banging.
And they Greek salad, boy. They feta cheese, man. They gonna
them olives, the feta cheese, the coffee, red wine,
tomato. They gonna do that to death everywhere you go. It's like, and it's to the point where you ask for simple stuff. Like, hey, you can explain. I want my toast separate from my egg. They come out. They got egg on top with tomatoes. It's like, what happened?
Yeah. They don't follow directions really well. Oh, last little thing, the monastery thing. So, just a little food for thought for you guys. If you are a wanted criminal, I'm talking about at the Interpol level, doesn't matter. If you're a wanted criminal and you go to a monastery, you are protected from any kind of federal or legal persecution.
In Greece?
No, they said any monastery in the world.
Even in the U.S.?
Yeah, so I was asking the lady, they's like, well, I don't think we have any monasteries in the U.S. The only monasteries I know of, like those old monasteries, they're all in Europe anyways. If there are any monasteries in the U.S., I'm not sure where.
Remember when we traded
Brittany
Griner for, what was he called? Something of death. What was he called?
He was like the merchant of death.
So if
he had been a monk at that monastery, the Holy Trinity,
he would have never done the time.
Nah, he would have.
The U.S. could have touched him.
He wouldn't have been locked up at all. But I guess the way they look at it is how it was explained to me by the nun. She was like, the thought process is, if you're a monk and you're living in solitude, you're not causing any crime from the monastery. You're not still connected to crime. You're a monk now, so it's like self-imprisonment.
So,
because I would imagine
like it's almost like if Bin Laden decided to say, you know what, I'm in, and maybe that's what he was trying to do. But I feel like with our government, when you do us wrong, they don't care about your customs. They're gonna find you.
He was
hiding in the mountains,
but he wasn't at a monastery.
He was living in seclusion.
Still, he wasn't. But he wasn't.
I guess what I'm trying to say is,
things
Brandon, I don't know how our government operate, but I feel like if you do something offensive to our country and you decide, all right, I'm about to just live a life peacefully, I don't think our government cares.
But I think if you do go to a monastery, well, no, you gotta think. Also, another thing is that the monasteries, what they had told us was that. Like, we couldn't even take pictures of the church inside, and the drawings and the paintings inside the church is wow, y'all. That's like a whole.
It was about the Crusades, and it was violent.
It was violent paintings inside the church. Like I'm talking
people
about,
getting skinned, decapitated, burned.
That's the kind of stuff they drew inside the monastery. But outside of that, while we're there, you can't take pictures of the monks. So keep in mind, you don't know who these people are. Like they could have very well been part of the Russian mafia. You know what I'm saying? But you can't take pictures. You can't, and their identity is protected there. So imagine if you're on the run and you make it to a monastery, wherever, if you that slick, nobody gonna know. You get what I'm saying? And then you live your life in solitude after like bombing whole cities and everything.
So what if you decide I don't want to be a monk no more?
Well, I'm pretty sure at that point it's like, all right, you on your own, my boy. Then when he saw the priest, the priest gonna probably tell you, all right, my boy, you leave. It's on you, Slim. Like them people get you. You safe here, but if once you leave here, the Mother Mary can't protect you no more. You on your own. I don't know how that worked. So, but yeah, that was a good time though. But that's pretty much our show for the night. Before we leave, you know how we do shout outs. So, quick shout out once again. Shout out to my man Armando Pantoa. His book, The Strategic Millionaire, came out. I actually just picked this up. So, check that out. If you're into like just learning more about how to be strategic with your money, check his book out. Also, birthdays. Shout out to our homie Sean Flora. Shout out to Sydney Kubia. Shout out to my man Justin Simon. Shout out to our cousin Jolene Ford, birthday coming up. Shout out to the homie Craig Majors, Free Craig. Shout out to Zashiba Reeves. Shout out to my people, Stephen Williams. Shout out to my homie Brent Rooker. Shout out to my cousin Donald Mayo, birthday coming up as well. And then last but not least, I want to shout out Malcolm X. His birthday was May 19th. If he was still alive, he would be 98 years old. Yeah, he would definitely be old. And then as far as anniversaries and weddings, because you know we like to shout out Black Love here. Want to shout out to Jeffrey and Stephanie Carr, 7 years of marriage. Also shout out to Ted Witherspoon. Well, Ted and Renette Witherspoon. They just got married May 5th. And then last but not least, want to shout out to Joe and Sylvia Herndon, 21 years. Special thing about Joe Herndon, he was actually a temptation. So when the group split into two ways, and they had these kind of like continuation of the Temptation legacy, he was one of those temptations. Member at K-Fam, so kind of cool there. But once again, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. We are the Nitty Gritty. No show next weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend. We ain't gonna be here. So
because we're celebrating the parental's retirement.
Yeah, celebrating Mike and Jen. So I guess that's a good shout out. Celebrating Mike and Jen Hawkins' retirements.
Oh, and Dad's graduation.
And yeah, Dad's graduation. He's getting his MBA. Was it not his MBA, but his master's in.
It was seminary for Bible theology, something like that.
Yeah, it's like biblical theology, right? So shout out to Mike Hawkins for that. So yeah, we'll be celebrating with them, but then we'll be back. That's gonna be the first Sunday in June. So we will see you guys then. Once again, it's your boy J. DeCosta.
It's your girl Katniss.
And together we are the Nitty Gritty. Thank you guys for watching, and we about to be out. I don't know why this button will be moving like I needed to, but we trying to be out. You know what I'm saying? Change the scene. There we go.